The category is What the Trans Darling.
Hey everyone, welcome to What the Trans.
Yeah, What the Trans. We are here.
Yeah, we are here. This is on me. I've been going through some shit. Felt really weird for a while. Thank you for sticking with us during this time. I'm doing better, mostly because, you know what, Ashley? I'm going to share something that my therapist said to me.
Mm-hmm.
Something for when you're maybe not feeling the best about yourself. Start a notebook where you write down the times where you do nice things for other people.
Oh, for other people. Okay.
Because the problem I was having for a while was, oh no, I'm the worst, and only remembering like times I have made mistakes or outright been silly. And my therapist was like, yeah, but you've told me about other things too. And I couldn't remember the times I'd done nice things. I couldn't actually remember them. So I actually had to start writing them down actively in a book, and I called it The Good Book. I drew a smiley face on it. And yeah, that did the trick. Like, not because I do an especially large amount of a humongous list of like things for other people, but I was just like, I do a lot more things like that than I thought. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us during this weird time. How are you doing, Ashley?
I am good. Yes, I'm acceptable. Yes, I've moved house, haven't I? And so that's been quite a thing. But all of the stuff is in the house now. We've got boxes to unpack and so much kitchen stuff to find a way of getting rid of. But yeah, mostly all is well.
Yeah, I've seen pictures, and just so you know, if you want to picture Ashley's home, imagine King's Landing, but at the top of a tall building. That's kind of where Ashley is living right now, and I wish I was kidding.
I mean, there's less exposed stonework, and we don't have portraits of kings all around the place, and sadly we don't have a throne room. But yes, we're at the top of a nice tall building, so I have a splendid view over the city that I shall call mine someday. Not out of a sense of civic pride, as in it's mine. I shall make it my bitch. Anyway, I'm kidding. Obviously, no ownership, comrades. So,
yeah. So should we try and do a thing? Should we try and do...
Let's get on with our podcasting hijinks that our audience has come to know and tolerate.
Yes, let's look at what's next on the episode rundown. Oh no, not the news.
Oh no.
Not the news, but it is news. And starting off, the government has cut the cost of applying for a gender recognition certificate from £140 to £5. This may appear to be good news, and it kind of is, but in the context of this whole rotten episode of trans history that has been Gender Recognition Act reform, to say it doesn't go far enough is an understatement. Good grief. The media parroted this announcement, and it was clear that the government and Women Equalities Minister Liz Truss saw this as a sign that the government are very much on the side of trans people. But anyone who has listened to us long enough will probably be able to guess how we feel about it. And Ashley, do we want to take the microphone for that part? How do trans people probably feel about this?
I think you've kind of already touched on it in that obviously it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. And my inner cynic, who is usually right, is wanting to point out the fact that the government have dropped this, have dropped it down to £5. So it is, that is affordable for almost everybody now. But by doing that, they have taken the most basic possible action. And then when trans people and trans groups stand up and say, well, that's not going far enough, they can then say, oh, but we cut the cost by so much. Oh, these people are so unreasonable, clutching their pearls as they do it. So I can't help but think that it's part of a strategy to paint trans people as being unreasonable when we complain about the fact that none of the stuff that we asked about in terms of making the process less bureaucratic, less invasive, less humiliating, none of that's been done at all. They've just dropped the price. And so it tells you something about where the Conservative government's priorities lie in that, we've made it cheaper, so what's the problem? And it's like, well, the fact that it was expensive wasn't the only problem, as we spent a long time explaining to you, so...
Years. Here's a very brief summary, and I mean very brief.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be skipping vast waves, even years of things that have happened here, but as you know very well, Ashley, I have been obsessively following this because... this was kind of the start of my journalism career, so I've been watching all of this stuff like a hawk for many years now. And basically, 2015, Parliament, in the form of the Women and Equality Select Committee, asked trans people, what's wrong? They came to us. And trans people of all stripes went to Parliament and was like, 25 things. And so the committee recommended, like, many, many things. The government picked one of them, GRA reform, then dangled that around for years, and then for a while, last year, we all remember when we were on lockdown, Liz Truss essentially announcing to everyone, oh, we want to protect spaces, we're going to ban trans people from spaces and all of this other stuff. She didn't say that out overtly, she leaked it to the Times, and she absolutely did. Basically torturing the trans community all the way through lockdown, like we didn't have enough to deal with. And then it's just like, oh, we're heroes now because we cut the price to a fiver. And it's like, yeah, but you traumatized so many people. 2020 was going to be a bad year for everyone. But for trans people in the UK, it was so much worse because you had the threat of lockdown being permanent for us all the way through. And then to come back and be like, oh, we're heroes because you cut it down to a fiver. And it's like, the reason you've cut it down to a fiver and not made it free is because the Act itself specifies there has to be a fee and you refuse to reform the fucking Act. So even that is a kick in the face in a certain respect. It's just another sign that we won't change the Act. We'll do what we can do within the Act, which is cut it down to a fiver. But also worth mentioning, last year, the report was called Legal Gender Recognition in the EU.
Very catchily titled report.
And that report ranks the UK's gender recognition system amongst the worst in Europe. The UK was included in this research because the research took place between 2018 and 2019 when we were still in the EU, and they placed all the countries into 5 clusters. Cluster 1 being countries that don't have legal recognition, and Cluster 5 being places like Malta who have self-identification or self-declaration or whatever you want to call it, basically almost no barriers. The UK are in the second cluster alongside Slovakia, Czechia, Poland, Finland, Austria, Estonia, Spain, and Italy. And the UK was placed in cluster 2 because of invasive medical requirements, which mean that the UK does not meet human rights standards set out in the appendix of the report. So the only way for our system to be worse, according to the European Commission's cluster system that they've got there, is if we didn't have one. And the government were just like, oh, we think the system is absolutely fine the way it is. And it's like, it's clearly not. It's clearly not. How many different fucking ways do you want to be told that it isn't?
As many as it takes. Sadly.
Yeah.
Well, although this particular government just definitely seems to have the, oh, we know best kind of thing, doesn't it? So
I think it's more that they're trying to not annoy the perfectly valid now transphobia that has become very, very prominent in the press. I mean, that was definitely the impression I got when Liz Truss was announcing her intentions for GRA reform in April 2020, where she wasn't actually addressing any of the issues that trans people raised, but was addressing the talking points in the media almost word for word. And I was just like, oh, great. This is going to be a wonderful fucking pandemic, isn't it?
Delightful stuff, yes.
But yeah, should we move on to the next thing before my rage goes weird and makes the podcast unlistenable?
Again? I'm kidding. Okay, so next up then, sticking with the government, there's the government's website where they do petitions. And if a petition gets a certain number of signatures, action will be taken. So, a petition on this government website which calls for the legal recognition of non-binary people has, at the time of recording, hit 130,000 signatures. So we're not totally clear why this particular petition is taken off like this when other ones previous on the same issue have very much not. But our own hypothesis that this is the result of, well, the youth basically sharing the petition on platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, and we here at the pod are far too old and feeble to understand. Now, legal recognition for non-binary people has been a big topic in the community, as previously the government has refused to entertain the idea. Non-gendered campaigner Christy Ellen Kane, whose pronoun is per for person, has been campaigning on getting an X marker on passports for decades at this point, but has repeatedly been told in the courts that the task of allowing non-binary people to be seen as such legally and in passports would be too complicated. Her case has now reached the UK Supreme Court and this will be heard in July. But in the meantime, the petition, as we've said, has hit over 100,000 signatures and the government will consider, air quotes clanging into place around that, debating this in Parliament, which we, as Michelle, in some capacity, will go to if and when it occurs, which will almost certainly not be as exciting as it sounds. The topic itself, however, has caused a certain amount of debate within the trans and non-binary community, as there are a good number of non-binary people who believe we should be campaigning for the abolition of gender recognition entirely. Concerns that have been cited by non-binary people include a difficulty entering countries where being identifiably trans, non-binary, or gender variant could in fact be dangerous, and also that the very concept of legal gender recognition is pointless. Now, writing for Pink News, C. Benedict wrote on the subject in September last year, saying that the majority of my non-binary friends who I've spoken to about legal recognition share my concerns about the vulnerability that comes with being legally acknowledged as non-binary. But all of us want something because the two brick walls of binary gender that press on us from both sides chafe and scrape and limit us. But realistically, the only way forward is long, because I believe instead of working towards a third category that may only lead to more chafing, we need to commit to the work of removing gender categories entirely where we don't need them. More recently, Pink News reporter Vic Parsons wrote that whilst legal recognition for non-binary people would be a very good thing, it must also be said that legal recognition could have some downsides, and asked if the goal of the community should be the abolition of legal gender recognition entirely. And here is another quote which is quite enlightening. A demand that the state legally recognises non-binary people upholds the current system, which affects not just non-binary people but others too. What if legal recognition for non-binary people could create a third gender category for state services? Would this see the government build non-binary prisons? Do we want more prisons and by default more prisoners? It's a complex question, but it's also not non-binary people who would be served by adding another gender category to the prison system. So we will have, of course, links in the usual place so you can read both pieces, and as to trans women, we would definitely recommend that other trans men and women specifically to do so. So what do you think, fellow trans woman?
I think that there have been times where I have very much advocated for non-binary legal recognition without considering what non-binary people were thinking about this, because I saw a few people maybe online say they want it and need it. I think people like Fox Fisher have been very, very adamant on this point that they see it as a good, and I sort of took their lead and made an incorrect assumption that is what the vast majority of our non-binary people would need. And one thing that has definitely come to the fore from this particular situation is that is not the case. That is absolutely not the case. And maybe before I open my trap about non-binary stuff, I should, do a better job myself. But when it comes to the petition itself, I mean, I agree with everyone on this. I don't know what to think personally. I don't know if it's my place to say. I mean, my end goal would be, I think, if you ask me, the abolition of gender markers entirely, or legal gender recognition entirely, so everyone is just a person. Like, that would be where my heart is. But then I also know that there are problems today that legal recognition would solve. I mean, what's your take?
I think it's really complicated for a start. So let's just put that one out there. And obviously, neither you nor I has all the answers, and neither you nor I is non-binary. However, within the communities that I've worked with for the last few years, what I will say is that I think the idea and the, shall we say, movement to de-gender official forms entirely, that kind of rings like the best. That's the approach that would be preferred, I think, because think about it, the government aggressively genders so many things. It's on your tax forms, it's on your driver's license, your passport, and actually there's kind of no need for it. Additionally, the Gender Recognition Act itself does kind of function as a list of trans people. So anybody that applies for a gender recognition certificate, the fact that they have done so does remain on a computer system somewhere, and obviously if that legal recognition is extended to non-binary people, that list will get longer. And I don't know how comfortable I am about having a centrally held governmental list of all of the trans people. I'm really not sure how good of an idea that is, particularly given the skidding recklessly towards the far right that this government is currently engaging in. And where's that going to end, essentially? And you asked me this on the 6th of May, which is, of course, the anniversary of Nazi-affiliated students breaking into, smashing the windows of, and burning down the Institute for Sexualwissenschaft in Berlin in the 1930s.
Well done for pronouncing that correctly. I never could.
Thank you very much. But, we're recording this on the 6th of May. It is the anniversary of that happening, and those people were not government agents. They were people who were affiliated with the views and the politics that the government espoused. And so, I've got my worst case scenario head on, as you can hear, but if there is a centrally held list of all the trans and non-binary people, what's a future government that is even more hostile to us going to do with that information? So the idea of not having gender on our forms at all, to me, rings like the best long-term solution, but I'll be interested to hear actual non-binary people talking about this and giving their opinion. So we would absolutely like to open the floor and make space on the podcast for that conversation to happen. So if you want to get in touch and, give your opinion about this, we could maybe feature you on the podcast if you'd be happy to, because I want to have this conversation and I think it's a good conversation to have. So please let us know.
Yeah,
get
I'm
in
thinking
touch.
we could maybe actually do what the BBC do, but in a good way. We can get a few people who are one side of things or the other, or maybe a bit of both, and give them the floor to have a chat about it. What do you think? Do you think that's a good move, or would that just be basically us? I mean, we don't asking people to have a fight.
Kind of, yeah. That's not good. We don't want to make it oppositional. We want to come to a place of mutual understanding, and we do want to have that conversation for what's brought you to that conclusion. Why do you think that? What's the work that you're doing, if any, that is bringing us towards that? So I think it's about having a conversation rather than a debate. But we need to make space on the podcast for non-binary people to do that. And whichever way we end up doing that, we need, or would like rather, to have those conversations. So please do get in touch if you think you can help us.
All right, let's go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so, in very good news, with some caveats probably that will become very apparent, but with very, very good news, Laurel Hubbard, a transgender weightlifter from New Zealand, is due to become the first transgender person to ever represent their country at this year's Olympic Games.
Woo!
The 2020 Tokyo Games were pushed back to this year due to the you-know-what, the nightmare we have all been living in for too long. Wear a mask, get a vaccine, wash your hands, etc. The news appears to have been broken first by a website called InsideTheGames.biz, which is a website we have never heard of before, but it has since been picked up by The Guardian, Newsweek, and many others. So pretty sure this information is broadly correct. She has not officially been selected as yet, but it's looking incredibly likely that she will be. Like, absolutely. For reasons that I don't entirely understand because I don't know how weightlifting works. Now, I'm sure that this news will not be met with endless debate about certain topics we aren't at all sick to death of. I'm sure that won't happen.
Mm-hmm. No, why would it?
But like I said, professional weightlifting is not a sport we here at the podcast know that much about, as we regularly have issues opening jars and carrying the shopping home. But from what has been said, Laurel Hubbard is really good at it, and it is going to be really amazing seeing one of us do the really hard lifting of things on the global stage. Ashley, what are your thoughts on lifting of things by a trans person in front of the world?
Well, I'm happy that it's them doing it and not me, because I've done a lot of lifting heavy things, having just recently moved house, and honestly, I can't see the future in it. I'm kidding, obviously. So the thing about having a trans sports person at the Olympics is going to provide inspiration and validation for so many trans people, trans young people, who might be thinking about, I want to engage in sport and gymnastics and other kind of physical activity, but I don't feel like I can because it feels like the world is hostile to me. There's bills against transgender people playing sports happening in the US right now, but then to see that actually, yes, you can do it. There is somebody out there doing it, representing their company at the Olympics who is trans. And I think the inspirational element of that is very, very valid, because there's going to be a generation of young trans people who grew up seeing that person on at the Olympics and, knowing or saying to themselves, I can do that too. Which yours and my generation, we didn't have that. And again, little by little, we'll see things change. So it's absolutely it's a positive. How wouldn't it be, really? And I just hope that the person in question isn't on the receiving end of too much nastiness, transphobia, and bile from people who, don't know anything.
I think that is unfortunately going to be a certainty, at least from the UK. This is my cynical side of me coming out, but I can see the press making an absolute meal out of this at the time. They'll be questioning whether there was some New Zealand weightlifter that should have got her spot because trans people shouldn't be allowed in places. I can see that happening. However, when it comes to the kids watching, and even us, as unsporty as we are, I mean, I cried when playing the video game Dragon Age Inquisition and one of the characters in that was trans. That's how desperate I think a lot of people are to see themselves in many areas of public life or fictional video game life. So yeah, I think you're onto something there. I'm a bit flippant about it now because I will watch the opening ceremony and I will watch all the people do the march that they do, all the different countries, and I know that I'm going to get a bit teary. I know it. I just know it. And Laurel Hubbard, if you happen to be listening, which is highly unlikely because you're on the other side of the world, God, you're great. You're great. So Laurel, you can't see this, but my thumbs are up. Ashley, can you confirm that my thumbs are up?
I can confirm her thumbs are up.
My thumbs are up. So, we got another thing.
We do have one more thing. Finally, very quickly. There has, of course, here in the UK, been some business in the courts that we need to talk briefly about. Maya Forstetter, a name many of you will no doubt be sick of hearing, has had her employment tribunal appeal case heard last week, and to be perfectly honest with you, we didn't look at it that much because she just sucks so much. Like, seriously, we cannot express just what an awful person she is.
But we're going to try.
But we're going to try. So, as we covered when it first came up a year or so ago, originally Forstetter took her former employer, the Centre for Global Development, to tribunal after her contract was not renewed, as they believed that her views on trans everything could have contributed to a toxic work environment. Forstetter's views were judged to be absolute by the judge in question, and I quote that her belief that she will refer to a person by the sex she considers appropriate, even if it violates their dignity and or creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment, the approach is not worthy of respect in a democratic society. So that judge nailed it. However, in the appeal, there was an intervention by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, where they defended Forstetter's right to be transphobic, and actually argued that her belief is protected under the Equality Act. This statement was obviously met with no small amount of horror by the trans community. Now also, Anne Sinnott, LGB Alliance co-founder and thoroughly ridiculous human being, is seeking a judicial review on how guidance that instructs on how to implement trans protections and the hearing on whether this will go forward to a judicial review is being heard right now as we record this on the 6th of May.
Hey, so this is Michelle cutting in as I edit this, and since we recorded this, the judgment on the Anne Sinnott versus Equality and Human Rights Commission has come in, and the judge has thrown it out with much prejudice. I have not been able to look at the wording of the judgment itself because that will not be released for a number of weeks, but essentially the judge straight up was like, no, everything about this is ridiculous. That is the feeling I am getting from analysis from people I know, as well as scanning the various social medias, looking at the various takes across the community. However, next week, we will be talking to a barrister about this in a little more depth to try and get some answers on what this means going forward for Equality Act protections of trans people. So make sure you check out that. But for now, going to go back to the past.
But for now, as a jaunty little insight into Maya Forstetter's thinking, she revealed that she had been approached by BBC4 Women's Hour. We will now reenact the encounter that Forstetter shared online via screenshots last week.
Hi Maya, this is Sarah. I'm a producer on Women's Hour. I was calling with an update on our interview with you. Instead of next week, my editor would now like to do this once the ruling has been made, whatever the result. If you're happy to give us a Radio 4 exclusive, I will be your contact going forward. It would be helpful to know if you've been given any sense of when the ruling might be. We would want to record with you the same day and then put the interview out the next day. Please call me if you want to discuss anything. Thanks very much, Sarah.
Dear Women's Hour, if you had been offered the chance for an exclusive interview with the suffragettes while they were campaigning, would you have done it? Or would you have said, it's not really newsy enough until we wait until the men have decided whether women can have a voice? So no, if you don't want to talk to me now, then I won't be talking to you after the judgment.
You have the chance to talk to someone on the level of suffragettes, BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour. How dare you?
How How dare you overlook me? I am a hero.
Oh my
God damn it.
God.
Me. Oh my God. Yes, the narcissism, the self-obsession is astonishing.
It was genuinely
frankly.
hard for me to look at that one at first. Like, it really was. And then suddenly I just couldn't stop laughing because it's just. And she shared that as, like, look how cool I am. And it's like, this makes you look like someone I don't want to bump into at a party. Like, even taking aside your views on trans issues, it just makes you sound so...
Delusional, narcissistic, self-obsessed. Yes, there are a number of things that it makes her look like. And it's like, wow, to say that this thing that you're doing puts you on the same level as the suffragettes of the 19th and early 20th century is just... wow, like Messiah complex or
Yeah, and what she is doing is essentially arguing that she should have the right to say things, I guess, in the workplace without it upsetting anyone. Like, I mean, the EHRC, when they intervened, like, I don't think they were entirely wrong in that a person legally can hold transphobic views and those are protected. The problem being that those are not treated in the same realm as racism and sexism and even homophobia, I don't believe, although I could be wrong on that one. I'm sure that someone listening will be able to correct me on this, technically. But why isn't it? Why isn't transphobia seen in the same area as those things? Why not?
It's the same as saying, oh, well, I think the views of Nazis should be protected under the Equality Act. And you're basically saying that people who are... part of the reason the Equality Act was required in the first place, people who discriminate, people who judge other people based on the colour of their skin or whatever, those views are just as valid as being one of those protected characteristics. And I'm sure the listeners can see how ridiculous this is, because it is just ridiculous. A viewpoint that is toxic and destructive and offensive should not be held to have the same level of protection. And, well, as the first judge for Maya Forstater said, it's not worthy of respect in a democratic society. But people are arguing that it is. And it's kind of astonishing that it's even made it this far to start with. But then again, shows you how much money these people have for barristers.
Yes. I don't know where this is going to land, because this is an appeal, she did fail the last time, and in the judgment of the last one, the judge set out like 5 things that her argument would have to meet, and the now infamous line about her views and actions not being good in a democratic society, that came from her failing the 5th one, which was essentially that. With the EHRC intervention, I don't know if that's going to stand up, so we're just going to have to wait and see, and that could be in a few months' time. There is great potential for this to do tremendous harm. So I guess we've just now got to sit and wait and maybe do a little bit of research, everyone listening and us, into Equality Act employment law. If you know somebody who works in human resources at your work, maybe have a conversation with them to get in the know and be ready for whatever the hell happens next with this.
Okay, so moving... oh, wait, hang on a sec. Should we talk about Caitlyn Jenner, her California governor run, her saying trans kids shouldn't be allowed to play sports, even though she took part in a women's golf tournament not long ago? Should we talk about that?
No.
All right, moving right along then.
All right, let's go straight to the meat. So this week on the meat, I had some really lovely interviews with some activists doing some really cool stuff all over the place. And yeah, I have massive respect for the people we talked to. Like, I wanted to try and find some people who are doing some cool work that people may not have heard about. Although I think at this point, you may have heard of at least one of these groups now, because they really have been rocketing up the trans community's consciousness in a way that has been very exciting for me. The Trans Safety Network. Now, what they do is they are a research group who basically research dangerous things that are approaching the trans community in a variety of ways. They've done wonderful work, including a wonderful write-up on how Jess Phillips MP wrote a tweet alleging that somebody who is alleged to have committed a murder of a cisgender woman was a trans woman, when actually the alleged murderer was cisgender. And she tweeted that, deleted it, and that started a whole conspiracy theory amongst anti-trans weirdos and nightmares who are now arguing that the murderer was clearly a trans woman because a cis woman murdering someone? No, that's never happened. They also did some wonderful work on the anti-LGBT conspiracy theory that Stonewall, etc. were advocating for a reduction in the age of consent. And that came from ALBA, Scotland's newest transphobic pro-Scotland independence group. And they basically just go into things in such a really, really cool way. They're information and fact-based first. They are really incredible. And I had the privilege of talking to Mallory and Emily from the Trans Safety Network. So here is that interview. Hello, Mallory and Emily from the Trans Safety Network. So, what is the Trans Safety Network?
I'll defer to Mallory on that one.
Right, okay. Yeah, Trans Safety Network is a small grassroots research collective. We monitor anti-trans hate campaigns, particularly stuff that is less discussed in the public eye, and we try to put together little packs of information that hopefully help explain what's going on for people who are having issues dealing with transphobic hate campaigns.
Right, okay. So, Mallory, what's your role in all of this? What do you tend to do?
I do a little bit of everything. I've been involved since early on, and there's not many of us. So bits of research, bits of trying to kind of track projects that we've got in the offing.
And Emily, what is it that you get up to in this? Because I know that you are very much into the numbers. You're very much into the stats. Is that what you bring to the project?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm on more on the sort of data side. I've been looking into social media, looking at sort of from social media and from websites, kind of primary collection of data, and research. And I mean, in my involvement in that, also making sure that our kind of the way we go about accessing data is kind of ethical and responsible. So, for example, making sure that if we're going to be looking into data from Twitter, that we access and handle any data in accordance with like Twitter's data handling policy.
How often do you find that looking at the data of like various accounts online and who they're following and stuff, how often do you find that factors into the work of the Trans Safety Network?
Well, we've published one article, at least to my memory, that looks chiefly at like social media data. A lot more of the work that we've done, a lot more of the articles we've published are looking into connections between groups, things they've sent out in mailing lists, etc. On the social media side of things, it can be helpful, but it's important to remember that social media isn't real life. It isn't all of, it's certainly a facet of real life, but it's not the entirety of things. So, just looking at who follows who on Twitter and who's talking about what on Twitter doesn't necessarily give you the whole picture. So, I mean, that's my involvement, but there's a lot more to what we do than just looking at what people are posting on Twitter.
You started up late last year, is that right?
Yeah, we started late October last year.
No, you started off with an article about the Truth and Science DVD campaign, which for people that don't know was a bunch of fundamentalists of a certain religion deciding that they were going to speak for science now and releasing a bunch of DVDs full of transphobic shit to schools.
They all technically have scientific qualifications. So like a lot of creationists do, they go and get scientific qualifications so they can be like, I am such and such PhD and I believe in young earth creationism. It's part of a strategy, really, that there's been much more of it in America than there has in Britain, but it's a sort of increasing thing in Britain as well, and also collaborations between scientists in Britain and scientists in America trying to, I guess, build kind of alternative evidence chains that are not necessarily approved of by the scientific consensus. So that's one of the things that I guess we're watching out for, like how people are clustering like mutually reinforcing circles of mutually approved evidence that isn't necessarily getting the sort of scrutiny that it might if it was getting properly peer reviewed by someone they didn't choose.
Yeah, and that kind of thing definitely appeared in your piece on the questionable expertise at Bell v Tavistock.
Yeah.
That was your second piece out, and that was the first one I'd read.
Yep.
But yeah, like I'm looking at it now, and you've covered a wide spread of analysis of the anti-trans movement. So I think you'd be the right people to ask. What is the thing about the anti-trans movement in the UK that you don't think is talked about enough?
I would personally say I think there's a lot of making it about individual personalities and opinions on social media, and there's a lack of looking into how institutions are supporting things. For instance, how like Oxford University recently sponsored to the tune of about 20 grand, I think, Jane Clare Jones' study on Jane Clare Jones's study on the supposed institutional capture and political erasure of sex. So there are weird conspiracy theories which keep cropping up, which are somehow ending up being sponsored and taken seriously by institutions like Oxford University, who are paying tens of thousands of pounds for them. And in the case of the political erasure of sex study, there's a degree to which there was, whilst it's not word for word plagiarism, a lot of the theories were originally taken from Jennifer Bilek.
Jennifer Bilek, rabid anti-trans person and anti-Semite.
Who, because she's become a sort of political hot potato, didn't get cited at all. And although we can kind of see online clearly that Jane Clare Jones, who wrote the report, shortly before writing the report, reading Jennifer Bilek's work. And when you look at other figures in the gender critical sphere, they all point to Bilek as the so-called expert on, you know, who's the money behind who's the money, and basically, you know, what's the Jewish conspiracy behind the trans movement.
This podcast has been accused of taking George Soros's money more times than I can count. It's died off now, but for about 6 months last year, it was at least once a week someone would be like, well, who's funding you? And I'm like, well, we've got a Patreon, and George Soros and the strikers are not part of that.
But I mean, like, I'm sure it would be nice if they were to kind of like write you a blank check. You'd be like, yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing is George Soros and all of them are, you know, they give money to all sorts of causes. They give money to women's causes. They give money to trans causes. They give money to like probably all sorts of scientific and health research, because these are rich people who need to offset their tax budget with philanthropy, like all rich people do. And it's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with us in practice, other than focusing like very narrowly on specifically the Jewish ones who are paying money into these sort of social foundations.
Yes, but isn't it funny how they focus on the Jewish ones, Mallory? Isn't that odd? I wonder why that would be.
And the fact that we've seen Bilek sharing material from neo-Nazis, defending material from neo-Nazis, and she's still a major sort of like Heather Brunskill Evans yesterday gave a webinar to Cambridge Radfems where she said Bilek is the one to go to for this information. She's not a fringe figure. But the thing that's not being talked about is essentially that there is a degree of, from my perspective as a researcher, I'm not interested in hate as a personal opinion. I'm not interested in who hates transphobes. I'm not interested in whether some random TERF thinks I'm a woman or not, or you know, literally anything. And I'm extremely libertarian about other people's points of view. My concerns are that this stuff is now getting sponsored and legitimized by major institutions of learning and thought, and laundered into the academy by people who aren't showing their notes about where they got these ideas from, first of all, which to me is a form of corruption, intellectual corruption, you know, not citing your sources. And because it's not really, like, there's a lot of very lazy accusations of you're a neo-Nazi or various other stuff that's thrown at anti-trans groups, but there's very little methodical inquiry into how this is happening and the problems with the decision making that are allowing this to happen on an institutional level. I think it's the power level that it's happening at that is really worrying, and that goes right back to when the Tories were sponsoring GC groups to visit Parliament back in 2016. It's not new that that's been the problem. I think it's a problem that's not looked at closely enough. Everyone's too busy about such and such said something awful on Twitter and not interested enough in who's got the power and how are they operating it.
So what I've been struck by since I've been following Translating Network is how fast you lot act and get stuff out there. Like, at time of recording today, Emily, you put out a piece on the LGBT Alliance being made a charity by the England and Wales Charity Commission. How did you put this stuff together so quickly? Like, what? How did you do that? That's magic.
I mean, well, that'd be telling if we told our secrets.
I understand.
Well, no, it's not that that mysterious. It's we are embedded within the trans community. We are trans people. We know, we all share and communicate about stuff that is worrying or concerns us. And I guess somebody is passing around a piece of news like, oh, look at this, LGBT Alliance have just been made a charity. Some of us in TSN just thought, well, let's go and look at the actual decision document. Let's go and read that and see what kind of information is included in there. And that's how we happened upon the fact that the Charity Commission had flagged LGBT Alliance as having engaged in inflammatory, I think to use the words of the Charity Commission, was it demeaning and denigrating the rights of others? So that's been flagged up officially by a government body. So I think a lot of people on Twitter were kind of like just outraged that they'd gotten charity status, whereas our kind of reaction was to go and look at the document and see what more information can be gained from this, other than just sort of like the immediate outrage at them being granted essentially a kind of degree of recognition and sort of cachet with or like kind of legitimacy. Sorry, to answer your original question, how does we report on things so quickly? Because we're well networked with the rest of our community. People pass things to us, or we go out and reach out to people and ask them for information, and that's how we're able to kind of...
What I get from that is that you have learned very quickly how to do this, because what the trans didn't start... It took like a year for us to realise that we could do that. Like, I remember after about a year into doing it, there was some kind of thing that involved a PDF of about 50 odd pages or something. And I sort of realised, oh, I should read that. And it's something I used to do like before when I was doing like work for, outlets and stuff. But it wasn't something I was necessarily doing for What the Trans all the time, because when we started, didn't have any idea what we were doing. There's something just like, oh, if we read the thing, we can comment on things with a more authoritative way. That's better. And it took us like a year to do that. So props to you for doing that from day one.
I will say on a personal level, it's still something that I'm, that I have to kind of actively remind myself to practice. It's not second or first nature to me just yet. Sometimes I do read a piece of news and I just get incensed and want to start kind of reacting to it online, and taking that step back and going like, okay, well, hang on, I want to learn more, dig into this a bit more and see what brought us to this moment. What's the as Mallory was saying earlier, which groups are exercising power in this situation and how are they doing it, and going and looking into that, rather than just kind of being outraged that these groups are using their power to kind of get what they want essentially, or kind of get more buy-in with the state or with legitimacy or what have you. So like, thanks for saying that. Like we're quite good at doing it quick, but I think it's because we have each other as a support network to remind each other to do that, and not to just give in to being upset about stuff when a piece of upsetting news is published.
I think there's another angle to it as well. Like part of what we're doing is trying to, there are a lot of ways that the media makes cash out of people's upset, angry reactions, and they make cash out of trans people just being constantly on edge about like this wall of bad news. And there is a lot of bad news, a lot of it's legitimately bad news, but part of what we are doing is also trying to reduce the sort of reaction cycle. And a lot of this media isn't being reported from the perspective of trans people's interests. It's being reported from a perspective of, what gets trans hate clicks, what stresses people out and causes people to like launch a slightly over hasty petition or whatever.
Yeah, it's entirely about getting eyes on the ads.
Absolutely.
And Trans Safety Network doesn't have any ads.
We don't have any ads. We're doing this for the love of the community. So at the end of the day, what we're putting out here is a product that it's intended for the benefit of the community in general, and for reducing the amount of BS going on, because there is a lot of it. on the internet.
Yeah. So would you class yourself as a news outlet? Because I'm asking mostly because for a long time, What the Trans was the only one. I mean, there were various points where ones would pop up and go away. And so I kind of got used to saying, oh, we're the only one. Is that no longer the case? A trans safety network, an outlet like What the Trans?
I don't think we're trying to be a news outlet. We're not trying to get coverage of all of the stories that are going on. We are fundamentally engaging in something a bit like journalism, but I think what we're doing really is research. We're researchers. We're providing information in ways that synthesizes stuff that wasn't getting looked at. Our job isn't being the news as such.
So as you are researchers, I know that like there's going to be a lot of times now going forward where the work that we're trying to do here, we're going to reference to a lot like we did on the episode before last, where we were talking about the partial reversal, sort of Bell, Mrs. A.V. Chaverstock. You did a write-up on how Kira Bell solicitors attempted to intervene in young trans women's healthcare, and we referred to that very heavily because that was something, even though I read the ruling, that wasn't something that stuck out in my mind up until I read your piece on it. So thank you for writing that. And I did heavily reference and tell people to go and read everything you'd ever done. I didn't just steal your stuff and say it came from my brain, so don't worry about that.
Great.
But yeah, what I will say to people listening is definitely check out transsafety.network, read everything they do. If you could set up some kind of notification for when they get new stuff, when Mallory and Emily and the other people at the network put stuff out, I'd say that there is something definitely to the idea. There are a lot of mainstream publications, LGBT and mainstream, who are very much about reporting on things like Robert Webber said this on a podcast, with the idea of getting you so angry you can't look away, and that may not be to your benefit. Whereas Trans Safety Network, from what I have read, which is pretty much every word they've ever done at this point, is always very fact-based and fucking great. So check out all of their stuff. And Mallory and Emily, thank you so much for talking to me today. Where can people find your stuff online?
It's available on transsafety.network, on the web. It's available on trans_safety on Twitter, and it's facebook.com/transsafetynetwork, all one word.
Excellent. And all those links, as well as personal accounts run by Emily and Mallory, will be in the description as always. Thank you so much for talking to me today, and yeah, keep up the wonderful work.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for having us. You too.
So you want to read more of what Trans Safety Network do, you can head to their website, transsafety.network. Do it. Read everything they've ever written. I swear to God, we're going to be reporting on what they do, I think, probably almost every week, because the work they're doing is incredible, and I love them to bits. You can follow them on Twitter, twitter.com/trans_safety. Same trans_safety on Instagram as well. You can also follow Mallory at Chicanery, but with a 3 in it, so CHICAN3RY. And you can follow Emily at -PLNP, and they'll all be linked in the description as usual. But up next, I talked to Layla, who goes by Nico Cardiff online in various ways, and we'll do links and stuff to all of their stuff as well. They are a graphic designer artist type who's pretty radical in their politics, loves trains, loves nerdery, very, very cool to talk to. And they have been making some stickery stuff, then been plastering Cardiff with all sorts of awesome messages, including stickers that say, hell yeah, trans rights, and transphobia kills, you can prevent it, as well as be grey to crimes. Trams rights, with a picture of a tram.
My favourite was support catgirl research.
That is an issue that is not talked about enough in the community.
It very much is not.
There is not enough research into the catgirl situation, and if you would like us to cover that on the podcast, please let us know, all the various communication things we have. But yeah, here is my chat with the awesome, really fun to talk to, really cool to talk to, Layla. Hello, Layla. Thank you for talking to me today. How's it going?
How's it going? It's going pretty well. Hello.
So, you are a street artist and activist based in Cardiff. When it comes to your politics, what are you about? What are you activisming about?
What are we activisming about? So, we're anarcho something to describe it.
Anarcho as in anarchist.
Yeah.
Anarchism.
Yes. But working towards that, obviously we need to have steps in the way. So things like currently with the Kill the Bill protests against the police crime and courts bill, which is going to ban protests if it passes. Things like getting the Tories out, things like ending the police, things, just social changes. Also, Public transport, hell yeah.
Public transport, hell yeah?
Hell yeah.
What do you mean by public transport, hell yeah?
Oh, what do I mean by that? Well, by that I mean, first of all, it's gr much better for the environment than driving around. And B, well, they're kind of like trains. So,
Yeah, you did mention before we started recording that you are big into trains.
oh, indeed. So,
I think the phrase you used was trains/nerdery.
yeah,
Want to go into that a little bit?
train nerdery. So, basically, we work as a train guard for a certain green train company, and we did that because we're just super into like trains. But then we said the slash nerdery because it's not just trains. There's like all kinds of things that are into electronics, photography, drawing things, you name it. So yeah.
So your activism when it comes to the stickers seems to be mostly focused on trans rights.
Indeed, at the moment.
So what made you start creating these stickers and slapping them all around town?
So basically, about 3 years ago, I noticed that there are a lot of transphobic stickers being put around, just handwritten labels with horrible stuff I don't really want to repeat on here, on them, just being put on lampposts and stuff like that. And I thought something needs to be done about this. So I just put together the Hell Yeah Trans Rights sticker. That was number one, in an evening, and got them printed out big and started sticking them over these horrible transphobic ones. And then that kind of snowballed into making more designs. And then we had a brief phase of people liking them. So I put up a web store, and then they kind of went quiet for a bit and they kept putting out more until recently they absolutely went mad on r/tra, and everyone's got them now.
Where did they go mad? On
Reddit tra, the meme sub.
Okay. I don't know it because I don't really use Reddit because I'm
it's
old and I don't understand it. Therefore, I'm afraid of it. That's how it works. As you get older, you become more fearful of the things you do not understand, which becomes most things, as I'm discovering.
I found out that we're pretty fearful of Twitter and shit because that can go wild. Apologies for cursing on your podcast too.
We swear all the fucking time on here.
Brilliant.
Like, don't worry, you're good.
We got told off by the BBC and told that our interview wouldn't be broadcasted because I cursed.
Really? You're interviewed by the BBC?
Oh yeah, so we were at a protest on Saturday for Kill the Bill and against the police. Ended up leading that by sheer coincidence. Just got recognized and was like, hey, you're the one with the stickers. Here, have this megaphone. And I'm just like, cool, I like this. And at the end of the protest, the BBC were following it and they came along. And since I was right at the front, they wanted to interview me. And I was like, sure. But then I'd already been slagging off the BBC outside their headquarters, shouting at them. So I didn't think they were going to broadcast it in the first place, but then they sent me an email saying, hello, we're very sorry to inform you that we can't broadcast this because it has the word bugger in it. And I'm just like, really?
Bugger?
Yeah.
That's barely swearing.
I think it's an excuse for them to say, we don't want to broadcast your anti-police sentiments, so please piss off.
That sounds like it could be a thing, because bugger.
Yeah.
They had like a newsreader say the N-word on the air.
I know.
Like, what? Well, I mean, fine. That's the most BBC thing I've heard today.
Also, something else that made me laugh is there was a newspaper article put out by Wales Online. Now we had to have it taken down because it had our face in it while we were taking a drink, but they called it Cardiff's Purple Menace takes to the streets because I was wearing a purple jacket.
You are the Purple Menace.
Yes. Apparently
what
so.
was the context of you being a menace in purple?
Oh, Wales Online, they're owned by the Daily Mail group, so of course they didn't much like the anti-police sentiment either.
Right, so I'm sensing a trend here. Your politics are not the most
compatible with mainstream media.
Yeah.
Not really. But then again, they do come from personal experiences. So
Yeah?
yeah, so the reason we don't really like the police is because we had a couple of incidents which ended up with trying to report to the police because we were scared and ended up getting laughed away. Thanks, West Yorkshire Police, love you. And the anti-media thing is because I've already been smeared by the media once in Leeds, because that was where the Hell Yeah Trans Rights stickers actually originated before it came to Cardiff. And I can't remember who covered it there, but they put it out as against women's rights or something stupid like that. So I was like, yeah, sod that.
And that was in Leeds.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of good trans and various kinds of activism in Leeds, but I also know there is a significant
turf problem.
a significant anti-trans problem. And I'm not trying to veer away from the word turf or anything, but
anti-trans puts it better, to be honest.
I think it's more inclusive of all of them, because I think
get all the trans roads in.
Yeah, because I think that the label turf only really applies to like maybe a third of them at this point. Like they don't, like most of them don't appear to come from the radical feminist world at this point. They definitely use their talking points and can be almost indistinguishable, but I don't know.
So it seems to me that radical feminists kind of are embracing trans people now because they've realised it furthers their cause in a way. Not all, but in a way.
Like that's what the impression I've got. Like from most radical feminist spaces, there's definitely the offshoot that are very infamous and have had a very, very horrible impact on things. But then radical feminism did move on from the second wave.
Yes, it did.
TERFs kind of give them a horrible name, and that's kind of what people think of now when they think of radical feminists. Yeah, but anyway, this is about you, and not about radical feminism and anti-trans weirdos on the periphery of them. So your stickers have been noticed, and now there's going to be a billboard based on your transphobia kills you can prevent it sticker design. Like, how did that come about?
So the sticker design, I was spitballing ideas one night because I'd seen like transphobic stuff and I wanted something more punchy, more powerful to get the idea across. And then I noticed one of my housemates smoking a pack of cigarettes, and I noticed on the pack of cigarettes it had the smoking kills you can prevent it, and a like the gory imagery of the lung disease and stuff like that. And I thought, hang on, can I spin that for transphobia? So I came upstairs and I found the exact ugly brown color they use on cigarette packets and made it look like that, but then went all in with the gory imagery and the just the simple message, flipping the whole dangerous trans people argument right on its head. And then I was like, hey Twitter, what do you think of this? Boom, off it goes. And I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, hey Reddit, what do you think of this? Boom, 13k upvotes. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, should I sell these? Boom, loads. With the billboard, so I noticed how big they were going on Reddit, and I just made an offhand comment saying, should I make this into a billboard? And it got massively upvoted. And then someone just sends me a Reddit message saying, hey, I work for an advert company. I would like to pay for your billboard in Cardiff. Get in contact. Here's my email address. And I'm just like, sweet.
That's incredible. So where's it going to be? Is it going to be in central Cardiff?
Yeah, it's going to be on Cardiff Queen Street. So it's the main pedestrian thoroughfare. It looks over traffic. It's going to be in one of the big billboard spots. And honestly, I can't wait.
Do you know roughly when it'll be out there?
Not yet, because it has got to go through the advertising regulator and stuff like that, because of course it is public advertising. But when it's all been approved and everything, it will be tweeted out when it's going up.
That's amazing. Like, you started off just like slapping stickers around the place and doing some activism and protests, and now your work's going to be for all to see in the whole of Cardiff.
And further afield, because also, like, I shied away from social media for ages. And when everything started popping off on Reddit, which is like the only thing that I really use, you'd lurk there and read things. And I'm like, oh, I should really make some social media accounts. I don't want to, but I should. And so I did. And they're kind of growing exponentially at the moment too.
So where can people find your stuff online, Layla?
So I have a website, n3ko.eu, and that is where I show off all the sticker designs, and it will soon be a bit of a bloggy thing too. And I also sell stickers there, with all profits going to Mermaids, Samaritans, and Stonewall, which is kind of nice because all three charities have helped me. And also, we're on Twitter and Instagram under N3KO Cardiff. And that's where you see all of the random political tweets and ideas and stuff being put out.
So yeah, and buy all of these stickers, because if I don't suddenly start seeing these on bus stops in and around London in the next few months, I'll be very angry, listeners. I'll be very angry. The
best thing is, they're now going to every continent. I made a tweet about this the other day, saying it's the final frontier, folks. And someone from the British Antarctic Survey had actually ordered one of the Transjoy Israel stickers. And I'm like, hang on, how far have these actually got? So I went to the store pages and realized that they have in fact gone to every single continent. Now I'd like to do a big shout out to the people in Xinjiang, China, who ordered some, in Russia, Novosibirsk, in South America, in Brazil, in Central African Republic. I'm like, these people are brave.
So your goal, it would seem, is to just plaster the planet in your art, in your designs.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's amazing to hear that everyone around the world is seemingly enjoying your work. That's incredible.
I know, right? It's kind of nuts.
Layla and everyone, I don't know what, I'm not the most familiar with plurality
Layla and
stuff,
everyone works.
So Layla and everyone there, thank you so much for talking to me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us on.
So after the interview, Layla mentioned something that I thought was worth bringing up. The stickers that they have been putting out online for sale. They've had over 900 orders.
Nice.
Like, they're really taking off, and the stuff about the billboard sounds really cool, like a big fat anti-transphobia campaign billboard that's going to be in the centre of Cardiff that will be seen by potentially hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions. I don't know what the foot traffic inside Cardiff is like these days. But yeah, God, I don't know how... Sometimes I meet people in the community and I'm taken aback just by how awesome they are.
How much stuff they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how it's like, wow, that's great, and that's great, and that's great. And yeah, we managed to speak to 3 such people just in one episode. So, that's value for, well, not money, because unless you're a patron. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that if we really wanted to make an episode that was 12 hours long, full of interviews like that, we could do it. And maybe we should for charity one day. That's an idea for the notebook. Let's put a pin in that for now. But yeah, I think that's the episode, right? We're done.
I think it is, yes. Well done on those interviews. Sorry I couldn't join you for them, but that was some great stuff to listen to about what the Trans Safety Network and what Layla get up to. But for now, we shall say goodbye. So obviously you can check us out on the usual social media ways. Facebook.com/whatthetrans. Twitter, we're at whatthetrans, whatthetrans.medium.com, and of course our shiny fancier website, which is whatthetrans.com.
Well, we've got a big thing to announce just before we go, right? And I'll let you do it.
Yes, we do.
I'll screw it up because I'm too excited.
Well, because next week we will be speaking to the current Chief Executive of Stonewall, Nancy Kelly, which is jolly exciting, and it's one of those things where we asked, not expecting to get, but we did get. So again, if you don't ask, you don't get. But yes, Nancy Kelly, current Chief Executive of Stonewall, having taken over from Ruth Hunt, which we're very, very excited to bring to you.
Yeah, we're going to talk with her about LGBT Alliance. We're going to talk to her about the government and GLA reform. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. So check that out next week. But for now, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. This episode of What the Trans was produced by Michelle Snow and Ashley Talbot. We would like to give a special thanks to our Patreon producer-level supporters, who are
Chrissy Jarvis,
Loopy Elephant Queen of the Mountain Circus,
Nick Ross,
Alice Chalkley,
Jasmine
Sim,
Melody Nix,
Zoe Laura Meyer,
Fiona Punchard,
John,
Lynn McKay,
Nick Duffy,
CB Bailey,
Gordon Cameron,
Peter Kimball,
Rachel T.S.,
Wen Witherop,
Vic Parsons,
Tila Wild,
Atom James,
Vanessa Billington,
Tower Watch,
Desiree Markland,
Samantha Raven,
Patreon user,
Derek Victor,
Sarah Bedful of Dogs Halliwell,
Emma Doyle,
Mike Dickinson,
Owen Willis,
Catherine,
Mina,
Elliot McVeigh,
Cassius Adair,
Tuck,
Melissa Brooks,
Ian Coomber,
Maddie Bow,
Kraken 12,
April Heller,
Sophie Lewis,
Alexandra Lilly,
Claire Scott,
Ariadne Pena,
Lauren O'Nines,
Mara Reynolds,
Bernard's Pink Jelly Bean,
and Lanos. Thank you to all of you for supporting us.